Welcome to the Santos Says podcast. I'm your host and your boy, Santos, proud owner of Santos Threads. Make sure you check us out online at Santos-Threads, Santos-Threads.com for the latest and greatest in men's and women's urban streetwear apparel. Get 15% off of your first purchase. Definitely look out for the fall collection coming soon. We're working on that. Definitely looking to get that going. But welcome to episode number 13. Also, make sure you follow me at Santos Thread Shop on Instagram so we can keep that interaction. So, on this episode, I wanted to get into this because as you guys know, I'm a clothing and sneaker enthusiast. And anytime big news comes in about clothing or sneaker companies, things like that, I like to really get into it and immerse myself into it, if you will. So on this episode, I'm going to discuss why the Adidas and Reebok partnership failed. So why the Adidas and Reebok partnership ultimately didn't work, why it failed. And I will also talk about how I would fix Reebok, what I would do if I were in the shoes of the Authentic Brands Group in order to move Reebok forward and get it back into a better position than it currently is in right now. So all that and more on episode 13, the Santos Says podcast. And here we go. So, first of all, when I saw the news, I really, one of the things that took me was obviously I was expecting it. It wasn't something that was unexpected. Adidas had made it very clear that they were looking to move Reebok. And then all of a sudden you heard all the rumors about what could be coming down the pike, potential buyers. Many years back, you heard Shaq was interested in buying Reebok. I heard those rumors. Recently, you heard Master P was interested in acquiring Reebok. But ultimately, the company or the entity that wound up purchasing Reebok was one that did not surprise me. If you read about these retailers and the business end of a lot of this, which really fascinates me and it interests me, I always like to keep up on these things. And I would strongly suggest as consumers, we all do that to keep up on what's going on. You don't have to be well versed and you don't have to know everything. The entire ins and outs of everything, as we're never going to know everything. But it's good to keep up on these things. And these things, for me in particular, are a point of interest. So one of the things that got me was that I saw the company that bought Reebok, and it didn't surprise me. Anybody who's familiar with the Authentic Brands Group, ABG, you can go to their website. Just Google them. They own a ton of brands, and their specialty really and their expertise, their MO has been really purchasing depreciated assets. That's what they do. They look for companies that are struggling, by and large, or that file for bankruptcy, and they acquire them, and they pump money into them. They come up with different marketing strategies. They come up with business plans, and they kind of come up with put them under their conglomerate. If you go on their website, you'll see that they have a ton of companies. They own a lot of them you may have heard of. Definitely like Eddie Bauer, companies like Nautica, Aeropostale. They also make a lot of deals as far as Brooks Brothers. They bought Brooks Brothers not too long ago. They make deals they buy licenses. They get a lot of licensing deals. And what I mean by that is, a lot of whether artists or whether deceased or living artists or athletes or prominent famous people sign licensing deals to have merchandise. And so these licensing deals are not, a lot of people don't know this, but these deals are not 100% owned by these entities, by these artists or by the artist estates, or the names aren't complete. These things are owned by companies. A lot of people don't know this when they sign these licensing deals. So it's complicated when they sign these deals. Generally speaking, unless they're independent, they generally don't own 100% of everything, the royalties, the likeness, etc. When it comes to these licensing deals. So, for example, Julius Erving is also under that umbrella. Now, Julius Erving is still alive, and I'm sure he gets royalties and he gets percentages, but he doesn't own the likeness. He doesn't own the whole licensing of his products, of his name. So he's under this umbrella as well. And so I found that really fascinating when I looked into that. Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, these were legendary figures who have licensing deals who are currently owned by the Authentic Brands Group, ABG. So I found that very interesting. And so let's get into this. I think it's very interesting because let's go into before the Adidas deal even happened, to kind of paint the picture a little bit. Before we get into that, actually, as far as the ABG, which I'm going to bring this name up as well, another person that is signed to ABG is Shaquille O'Neal. And I'm going to talk about how Shaquille O'Neal ties into this whole thing, because I'm going to make a bold prediction when it comes to Reebok and Shaquille O'Neal in a little while. But in 2005, Adidas acquired Reebok in a deal worth roughly $3.8 billion. Now, mind you, the company ABG just purchased Reebok from Adidas in the amount of roughly $2.5 billion. So Adidas ultimately took a hit. When you look at it from 2005 to now, and having sold that brand for that amount, they totally took a hit. They were unable to revive the brand to its former glory, although there were some ups and downs. There were some encouraging signs along the way. It wasn't all negative, but certainly they left quite a bit to be desired. One of the reasons I decided to talk about this episode also was because I am a fan of the whole fashion industry, the apparel brands and all that. I love that whole dynamic, the business side, but I also am a Reebok fan. I do. I remember growing up, I wore Reeboks. We didn't always have money for Nikes or Jordans and stuff, and we wore Reeboks. And back then, the quality was pretty good, and Reeboks were very, they were decently priced, and they were affordable and made with pretty good materials. And I'm sure anybody who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s could vouch for me on that. So in 2005, Adidas made that deal, right? They purchased the brand for $3.8 billion. Now let's go into what happened before that. So according to this timeline that I put together this timeline. In the early 2000s, Reebok signed Venus Williams. Now you got to remember, Serena gets all the credit, and rightly so. Serena is one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Venus was a great tennis player in her own right. Venus is a very accomplished tennis star, one of the all-time greats in the sport as well. Not quite her sister Serena, but I mean, come on, not everybody can be Serena. Serena's, one of the all-time greats. So let's talk about this. So in the early 2000s, Reebok signed a 10-year deal with Venus. I couldn't find the number amount, but it was a 10-year deal, which back then that's a big deal. A tennis star signing a $10 million licensing agreement or endorsement deal is a big deal. Reebok in the year 2000, prior to that, year before Venus signed her deal, Reebok and Nike signed a 10-year licensing / uniform apparel deal. 10 years. Remember, kids, Nike wasn't always the official, outfitter of the NFL. It used to be Reebok before that. And Reebok had a nice run with them. They had, a good 10-year run with the NFL. So the NFL reached out to Reebok to make that deal happen, and they came to that deal. So obviously Reebok was in a place at that time, early 2000s, that they were still a major factor in the industry. But just 1 year after that, in 2001, the NBA also signed a licensing deal, and merchandising, licensing, endorsement deal, outfitting deal with the NBA. So the NBA would become the official outfitter of all 29 teams, warm-ups, T-shirts, hats, jerseys, all the merch, you name it, T-shirts, everything. So Reebok was also, so you go to 2001, at this time, Reebok had Venus Williams, they had the entire NFL and the entire NBA that they were outfitting, essentially. These were three major things that they had in their favor. Then you fast forward to a couple years later, they would become the official outfitter of the WNBA from 2000 in the 2004-2005 season. They became the outfitter of the NBA. They outfitted all 16 teams at the time. Then you go a year after that, 2005, Reebok was also outfitting another league. Which league was this? The NHL. So let's look at this time period. The NHL, the NFL, the NBA, and the WNBA were all outfitted by Reebok in the mid-2000s. This was right before Adidas purchased Reebok. Right before. So we know what the deal is right now, right? Right now, it's funny because now you see all these rappers that have collaborations, they have their own signature shoes. It's so commonplace right now. Back in the day, it was something you never saw. It was ludicrous. It was something that you would never see. An artist, a rapper, a singer having their own signature shoe. When would you see that? That's not something you would see. It just was not. And so, to put it in perspective, understanding this time period, we're going back now, early 2000s. In the early 2000s, there was one artist who broke down barriers, and there was one company who did it. The name of the company was Reebok. The name of the artist was Jay-Z. In 2001, Reebok made Jay-Z the very first non-athlete to have his own signature shoe. The name of the shoes it was called the S. Carter. The S. Carter were the first signature shoes that were released by a company. The first signature shoe for a non-athlete released. The S. Carters. They came out. Now, at that time, it was a different world. Remember, we were not talking about the craziness that you have with the sneaker raffles nowadays. Back then, people, by and large, had to go to the store and buy the sneakers. The quantities weren't quite, they weren't as readily available, and the demand wasn't there quite as much either back then. It was a different world. Like the sneaker world wasn't the same like it is now. You can make the argument that the sneaker game has become a lot more flooded, has become a lot more overexposed, which I talked about in a previous episode of the podcast, how, now the sneaker industry is out of control, and it's got so much hype, and a lot of that is due to social media that really kind of blew up everything. It kind of ruined it for the people who used to love to be able to buy sneakers on a regular basis because they like them, right? So the resellers and all the hype beasts and everything just totally destroyed the game. But I digress. So this would happen back in 2001, 2002. So they announced it in 2001, but the shoe actually came out in 2002, the S. Carters. So then what happened after that? The following year, let's put this in perspective. The following year, 2003, 50 Cent was the hottest thing in the entire planet. 50 Cent was dropping hit after hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. 50 Cent was dropping hits all the time. That's what he was doing. And you had the G Unit. He had the G Unit album. He had G Unit clothing. So it was only right that he had his own sneaker. G Unit, 50 Cent would follow suit by having his own signature shoe, which was also put out by Reebok. So Reebok at this time, look at this. Reebok had 50 Cent and Jay-Z with their own signature shoes by Reebok. And when they came out to mixed results. by and large, but they did sell out. The shoes did sell out. Like, I'm not going to say that they were like, you know, I mean, you can go back and Google them, reference them. They weren't the best looking sneakers in the world, I'll admit. Even back then, you know, I used to love those artists, but it wasn't the thing that I was clamoring to get the shoe. I never really found the shoe super appealing, but they were popular because of who, you know, because of the people who were endorsing the shoe. So G-Unit, 50 Cent, and G-Unit and 50 Cent, they had their own shoes. And then shortly after, Daddy Yankee, with the explosion of reggaeton, and this was a big deal. This was before Bad Bunny got his own shoe, before J Balvin got his own shoe, before Travis Scott got his own shoe, before Yeezy had his own shoe. No, this is before Beyonce, before everybody. Before, who did I miss? Rihanna? I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of others, whatever. This was before all of them. Daddy Yankee had a shoe. 50 Cent had a shoe. Jay-Z had a shoe. And all three of them, given the time period, remember, they didn't release tons of quantities at that time. They just didn't. Put it to you this way. They didn't release tons of quantities, and everything was sold exclusively in the store. And, you know, there was no online sales. They didn't sell these things online. So they were exclusively in the store. They were not sold online, no lotto raffle system, nothing like that. And they didn't put out the same quantities that they would put out now. And they didn't have the same hype that they would have now. So that makes sense. If you quantify all that together, it makes sense. It was very fitting for that time. They did well, you know. They did pretty well. So Reebok had an opportunity at that point. This was before the Adidas sale, before Adidas acquired the company in 2005. They had a chance really there with some of the best acts, with a lot of most of the professional leagues under their umbrella. They had such a great opportunity there to really build up this steam. So what happened? Well, what happened was they couldn't develop anything. They didn't at that time. What happened was they did not find a way to keep that momentum going. They failed to they didn't give the customer what they really wanted. They didn't give the consumer what they wanted. Their shares would continue to go down. The popularity didn't catch on. To be honest with you, in hindsight, those deals were great deals. The Jay-Z, the G-Unit, and the Daddy Yankee deals. But those guys, we're looking back now in hindsight, they probably should have had better looking shoes. Let's be honest. Go back. I invite you guys to go back and Google those shoes. You will be underwhelmed. The shoes were not the best looking shoes. They just weren't. They had a little hype just because of who they were, but that was about it. They weren't the best looking shoes in the world. They weren't. And then so with that, it was a trickle down effect. It wasn't just that, but it was also the fact that, you know, Reebok had lost their cool factor. They didn't have all these athletes they used to have, like when they had Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson was essentially in the NBA. He was like on an island by himself. Shaq had left the brand. Shaq was no longer there at that point. Shaq had gone on to create his own brand. If you remember, he started creating the affordable, more affordable shoes, which I commend them for doing that. That you would find in other stores such as Payless or low end, low market, discount stores. So that's what he did. And I give him credit for doing that. It takes a lot of guts to do that. But a lot of it also was based on Reebok's direction. The creative direction wasn't there. They weren't innovating anymore. Reebok had failed to innovate. They failed to adapt to the times. They just didn't do anything innovative. They were just clinging on to their past. And so with that, they got left behind. So they just started to go down. The popularity went down. The brand's visibility went down. The cool factor went down. Everything went down with it. So then Reebok got to the point that they became desperate and they had to sell the brand, which then happened, then in comes Adidas. Adidas comes in and they had the opportunity. So why did the Adidas and Reebok partnership fail? I'll tell you what happened. So in the beginning of the partnership in the 2005, 2006, 2007, Adidas really spent time trying to discover what they were going to have the brand be. They didn't know what the brand was going to be. Pretty much, like, in my opinion, they wasted a lot of time struggling to find an identity for the brand, for which they started doing different things like investing in CrossFit, kind of like, it's not aerobics. I mean, back in the 80s, it used to be like aerobics, but CrossFit, workout, athletic gear, things like that. So they tried to do that. They had like a different logo, and they experiment. I mean, God, they changed their logo 1,000 times. They started using these ridiculous zigzag patterns on the bottom of their shoes. I mean, it was a mess. It was a mess. It was awful. I mean, they cheapened their brand so bad. So they were focusing on this, and then they, at this point in the mid to late 2000s, you know, they were doing this. They were doing aerobic stuff. They were changing their logo 1,000 times. Everything was cheap, and at that point, that was it. They ruined their reputation. They had cheapened their brand. They had cheapened their brand almost beyond repair. So then what happened? Fast forward to more recent times. A couple years ago, I want to say 2018 or so, 17, 18 range, 19 range, around there. Reebok announces they're going back to the Vector logo. This was one of their best ideas they ever did. Why? Because when Reebok was at its peak, it used that Vector logo. I invite you all to Google the Vector logo. The Reebok Vector logo is the Reebok logo that everybody knows. It's the one with the little, you know, thingamajiggies. The Vector logo. That's what they call it. That's what I'm going to call it too. With the little thingamajiggies. So it has these little puzzle pieces that they look like they fit together, but they don't put them together. It's something like that. Anyway, that's what they did. And you know what? It resonated. They started to release the classics again. They brought out the classics, all the classics, the gum sole bottoms, the ones with the straps on the top, and the woman's shoe with the sleek silhouette with the gum sole and the two straps on the side. And then they started doing this. They started doing all this. Oh, let's focus on they started releasing the Reebok questions. They started releasing the Shack Attack, the Shack Gnosis, all these shoes, and hey, it built up some buzz again. They started building up buzz. They started doing different things to kind of, you know, paying homage to their past. And I guarantee you, if you look at the figures, it helped. It started to help. It helped. That branding strategy worked. It worked because it took Reebok from like the bottom, like that. There was a point where like Reebok was just a joke. Like, you don't want to wear Reebok. Like, Reebok was like almost they were on the cusp of obscurity. They were right there. You know, right now at this present moment, Reebok is kind of like up and down. They're teetering a little bit. But at that point, a couple years ago, they were on the brink of total extinction. I mean, they were in a bad place. So Adidas had done some things right. They started doing some real good things as far as paying homage to the past of Reebok's history. They came out with these different tracksuits with the jackets and you know, things that you would see in the 90s as the 90s trends started to come back to the forefront. You know, started to come back. And so with all that, you know, they started to kind of cater to that, bringing back some of the old styles from the 90s and the late 80s that everybody knew and loved, paying homage to their history, their heritage. And those are the things that people wanted. Reebok had a golden opportunity at that moment. They had the golden opportunity to put itself back on the radar. But I believe that the ownership and the leadership at Adidas, they never quite wanted Reebok to get to that level. Anytime you have a parent company like Adidas that is, you know, competing with the giants, you know, which is Nike, right? Especially with Nike, not even Under Armour. Under Armour is, you know, they're not on that level, but especially with Nike. So anytime you have a company like that competing with New Balance, which New Balance is getting nice little steam now. New Balance is doing really nice things. Puma. So when you're competing with Puma, New Balance, and Nike, especially the behemoth that is Nike, your sole focus as a company, as a brand, is and it's just, it kind of makes sense in a way when you put yourself in their shoes. Their whole focus was always Adidas. That was their focus. How can we be number one? And so they're focusing on trying to knock out Nike the whole time. That's what they're focused on. They were worried, they were pandering to the Yeezys. They were working on the Adidas classics. Adidas has their own classics. They were just worrying about their own classics and the Pharrells and at the time also the Ultra Boosts and the Superstars and the Stan Smiths. I mean, Adidas's the Samba, all these different, the Gazelles, all these different classics from their catalog. They had their own classics they were worrying about. Plus, they were trying to keep up with that new generation, with the newer releases, with the Boost technology, with the Pharrell ones, all these different things. And in recent times, with the forums and the Forum 84, bringing that back, and with collaborations with Bad Bunny, things like this darn microphone. I'm moving my hands too much, but with those things, they were focusing on those things. So because of that, I feel that Adidas never really made Reebok a priority, and it's a shame. They were not worried. They weren't trying to get Reebok to another level. They wanted to keep them around. Just, I felt like, to me, in my opinion, based on what I've seen with them, how the impression they've given me and countless other consumers is that their thing was just to keep Reebok afloat enough to try to make a couple bucks here and there if they could, try to keep it at a certain point, but never to get to the point where it would even be a factor. I don't think they were worried about Reebok per se being, trumping Adidas. But, obviously the ego part is always a part. It plays a hand in everything. When you're the main company, when your main company is Adidas, I don't care how many other companies you own, it's always going to be your priority. Your priority is going to be Adidas. It's just like if you ask anybody at Nike if they ever give you some truth serum, they own Converse, they own another brand called Hurley and a bunch of other brands. Nike's always going to be Nike. Nike is the top priority, point blank, period. It always will be. Now, Nike's done. See, I will make the case, though. I'll make the argument, and guys, let me know what you think. Definitely chime in on social media, or if you're watching this on YouTube, in the comments, definitely chime in. I want to know your opinions. I definitely feel that Nike's done a better job with Converse than what Adidas did with Reebok. I really believe that. That what Nike's done with Converse is very nice, and quite frankly, I really love what they're doing. They get it. Like Nike seems to get it. I know that Converse is never going to really be on par with Nike, but that's okay. I think they've done a great job with these new releases they've come out with and paying homage to their basketball heritage with the different designs that they've made and the high tops and the leather series, things like that. I think they've done a tremendous job with Converse in recent times. So this is, this is the thing. So I just feel like, it was frustrating also because I noticed the same thing as a consumer. Like I remember, Reebok kind of got caught up in just coming out with the same signature models after a while, especially in recent times. Like I think they focused too much on coming out with Reebok question shoes. Like how many Iverson question shoes do you have to make? Like you're ruining. You don't have to come out with like 1,000 of them. You don't need that. Like people want the OG colorways and maybe a couple colorways that are obscure or a little different or revamped. That's it. Like you don't need to come out with like 100,000 Reebok questions. Like you don't need that. We don't need that. Like you have to maintain the mystique and a little bit of that scarcity of the line to keep it at that level. You can't pump out a new colorway every month because it just cheapens the product. It cheapens the line. And I felt like in recent times, especially the last year and change, I feel like they've cheapened the Iverson question line, to be honest. And another thing too, and a lot of people won't know this, and it's okay. It's not something that's common knowledge, but in a lot of these re-releases from Reebok, they've cut corners on the materials. A lot of kids, they're not using genuine leather or real leather. They're using a lot of leather blends with plastic blended materials, leather bonded materials. Because I know, when I touch sneakers, I know how to test the materials. I know how to look at the materials. I know, I smell them. I know how to touch them. I know how really good materials feel. And so they've really cheapened the brand. They've cheapened they've cut corners on quality in recent years. I've noticed that. Reebok used to use this technology called Hexalite. And a common thing that you see now with the releases from recent time is that Reebok is not using real Hexalite. Now, that could be a cost-cutting measure, which I get. But if you're Adidas, who you have all the money, you have the tools, you have the resources, why not, if you're trying to have a brand be successful and you want to put the best foot forward for this brand, why not go the extra mile on those details and provide the quality that the consumer really can appreciate, that they really want? Those details, the consumer is not stupid. See, a lot of times these companies, they act like the consumer's dumb. Like they treat us like we're stupid. And in some cases, we are stupid. There's people who will buy something regardless of the quality. And you should never be that. You have to be an educated consumer. You have to know what you're buying. You got to do your homework. You got to know, what's quality and what's trash. And so in recent years, they've cut corners with the leather quality, the blended leather and plastic materials. And so the quality is not on par, and there's no real Hexalite. The Adidas Question shoes and the Reebok Question shoes, as well as countless other Reebok basketball sneakers, had a Hexalite material. And the material because it gives you that support. It gives you that comfort. Hexalite was crazy comfortable. Anybody who was around during those times in the late 90s, early 2000s even, knows what real Hexalite felt like. It was amazing. So these shoes they don't feature that real Hexalite technology, which is it's terrible. It's bad, because it doesn't make the shoe authentic. It's not what it was. And so why not incorporate the real technology in these retros that these shoes had, especially if you're going to charge more, the same, if not more than what you used to charge before, at least make the materials worth the price you're going to charge. I just think it's fair to do that. So they've done that. Adidas did that. They cut corners on the quality. They always kept, and I remember I would purchase, some of the kids, I got to say, some of the kids' shoes were amazing. I bought some of the kids' sneakers. My kids, I bought them some Reebok sneakers. They were great quality. They were good shoes. So for certain shoes, they did keep the quality standard, or they kept up a high standard of quality, I should say. They did keep that up. But for others that you would expect, that some of the other premium shoes, they didn't quite live up to the standard of what you would expect for quality, which was disappointing. And I say this as a fan. I was a fan growing up in the 90s and early 2000s of a lot of different Reebok sneakers. And so, they did a good job. One of the things they did good with Adidas, with the Reebok brand, is they did a good job also. One of the things they did do a good job with was releasing the D Brown. I thought that was a good release. That was a nice thing to do. The D Brown dunk contest from 1991. They retroed that. That was a nice shoe. That was a shoe that the public really wanted, and they did a good job with re-releasing that. Kudos to them for that. It had the pump. Now, again, I don't know how much actual technology I don't believe the technology is exactly what it was, but they did release the shoe, and the leather quality is so-so. It was not great, but they do get some credit for releasing it, at least. But again, they cut corners. They did cut some corners when it came to that. So I do give credit for releasing it. Just I wish that the material was 100% what it used to be. So they get some credit, but so just that, and so they get credit for that. They get credit for releasing the kamikazes. I think that's great. But again, they're trying to do with they're trying to do with the kamikazes what they're doing with the Question. Now they got like 100 different colorways. The people don't want 150 different kamikazes. The people want a couple of kamikazes. That's it. They want the OG colorways and throw one or two special limited edition colorways. That's it. We don't want 100 different. We don't want the Miami Dolphin colorway and then the navy blue and white colorway. We don't need all these different colorways of the kamikazes. That's not what we want. We want the Sean Kemp Seattle Supersonics 90s colorways. That's what we want. Give us that. So that's, and they released these pumps. They had a couple different pump shoes that they've released over the years. They've done good with paying homage to those. But again, Adidas has been tone deaf when it comes to the quality. I felt like they kept Reebok at they want to always keep Reebok at a certain level in comparison to them. Even the apparel, I bought some of the apparel. The apparel felt very cheap compared to what they did with Adidas. They didn't even use the same type of materials. The t-shirts didn't feel the same. I have a Reebok t-shirt that I bought and I wore it like twice and it got a hole in it. Like, come on. You can't be doing that. You can't be crapping out on the materials. And again, I've had Adidas pants and I've had Adidas shirts that have lasted forever. That the quality never ruined. The quality is always good. So those inconsistencies in the quality just sent the wrong message anyway. If you're going to have inconsistent quality, I know they're not the same brand, but hey, if you want to bring Reebok to a certain level of credibility and respectability, you can't crap out on the materials. You have to keep it. You have to keep some consistency with those materials. And so that was disappointing. They cheapened the brand. And so I've always felt like Adidas wanted to keep Reebok at a certain level, but not to surpass a certain point. And so it always felt that way, at least to me as a consumer. It always felt like they wanted to keep Adidas at a certain level, but not Adidas, keep Reebok at a certain level, but not to surpass a certain point or not to even be a threat to them, which at the time they were their own company. So let me see what else here. So here's the thing. This is what I would do. What would I do to fix Reebok? How would I fix Reebok? Now, remember, earlier in the show, I mentioned a prominent name, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal, or as you may know him, the Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats and one of the all-time great pitchmen as well. This guy's got commercials everywhere. He owns companies everywhere. A couple years back, he mentioned the frustration with the direction that Adidas had taken Reebok. He mentioned this. You can look this up. He was very frustrated with the direction that Adidas was taking Reebok. So he also pleaded with them that he wanted them to sell the company to him. He wanted to buy the company. Now, this is where it gets interesting. As I was doing research for this show, I found this part fascinating. I mentioned the name Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal has a relationship with ABG. Shaquille O'Neal has a licensing deal with his own products, with which ABG owns. Probably, I don't know the percentages, but it owns a portion to that licensing because they are listed on their website. So Shaquille O'Neal as a brand, as the likeness, the licensing is listed as part of the ABG. So then the light bulb went off in my head. I cannot let go. I cannot go without saying this. This needs to be said. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my prediction. Shaquille O'Neal is going to play a part in Reebok. It is undeniable. The writing is on the wall. Shaquille O'Neal already has a group with a relationship with ABG. That tells me that Shaquille O'Neal and Reebok are going to do business. And for Reebok, this could be a very good thing. And so as I think of ways that I would fix Reebok, this is one of the things I would do if I were Reebok. Shaquille O'Neal, I think, is going to play a factor. I would be surprised if he doesn't. He's going to be there at some capacity. If I were Reebok, I would hire him at least. First of all, I'd get him a share in the company. So he's going to have a stake in the company. I don't know what percentage. I don't know what kind of deal they're going to work out. But Shaquille O'Neal doesn't do anything without at least getting some ownership. Shaquille O'Neal was going to have, since he has that partnership already with ABG, I would assume he's going to work out a deal with Reebok to have a percentage in ownership, and he's going to have a prominent role in Reebok. I would have Shaq really work with them on the basketball front. They need to get back in the athlete business. Reebok needs to get back to signing prominent athletes. Forget about the entertainers for now. Now, the entertainers, you can get to that in quick time, in short time. You really can. But I think to reestablish itself as an athletic brand as it once was, you need to get back to the athletes. So of all the sports, there's no sport that moves the needle when it comes to shoes like basketball. Basketball is all about the shoes. It's all about the shoes. So with that said, you have Shaquille O'Neal there at your disposal. You have his knowledge. He's a very good businessman. He's a brilliant businessman. He's a good pitch man. He's got tons of ideas. He has experience. He's a wonderful face for corporate. He's great for diversity. He's got everything. He checks all the boxes. He's got a great knowledge and expertise. And guess what else he has? He has history with the company. You can make the case, outside of Allen Iverson, Shaquille O'Neal was probably the most prominent Reebok athlete at that time when they were together as partners. Bring Shaq back for that. Shaq can do a role where he can focus on the basketball role. You got to have a basketball division. I am telling you, Reebok needs to have a basketball division for which Shaquille O'Neal is on the top of. He's in charge of this. And he's going to help recruit. And they're going to try to bring, you don't got to sign 1 million guys. Look for, all you need is 2 or 3. Try to find 2 or 3 prominent young ball players that are coming up and sign them to sneaker endorsement deals. The important thing is to find people who you can build your company around. So that's important. You want to find someone who's going to be good for years to come, and also someone that's going to be reliable and someone who you think can sell shoes. That's what you got to do. And bank on those 2 or 3 guys. But for now, you can focus on one guy. Find that one guy that you can focus on and bring him in. Bring back the basketball division. That's what you're going to do. You're going to start signing endorsement deals. You got to sign athletes, bring basketball players back, and so you can start building for the future of Reebok to create a new basketball division, similar to what Puma's done. Puma's done a great job of reestablishing its basketball culture. There was a time where Puma was non-existent in basketball. They were gone. My opinion is, if Puma did it, Reebok can do it. Puma was as dead as could be. Like, Puma was dead, and Puma came back to life. So I think Reebok can have a similar strategy in bringing back its basketball division. And in turn, this is going to help sales all around. You're going to have new shoes, new young stars to build around. With that comes new merch, new shoes, new products, new demographics. These things reach for the youth. You got to start building that new generation of follower. You got to bring it because it's not there. Right now, it's not there. The young people, Reebok doesn't resonate with this young generation. You got to establish that. So with these new young stars you could bring in, you can bring it back. You can reestablish it. And then if you want to work on another sport, I got another sport for you. Baseball. Now, baseball is not going to sell shoes as many shoes as basketball. I get that. But back in the day, there used to be a guy who had a shoe. You may have heard of him. Frank Thomas. Reebok needs to bring back the Frank Thomas shoes and bring back Frank Thomas. I think that'll work. Bring back retro those Frank Thomas shoes. Bring back those OGs, the black one and the white one. Bring those back. People will eat them up. And with Shaq, you can have Shaq and you can have Frank Thomas. Frank Thomas is a very smart businessman as well. He's a legendary Hall of Famer. Frank Thomas can help work on the baseball division. Now, the baseball division, again, that's the thing with the baseball. It's going to be tough to kind of bring the shoes for baseball. But you can start with trying to sign guys to endorsement deal, Just endorsement deals. They don't have to have their own shoes right away. Just endorsing them, getting people to wear baseball stuff, Reebok stuff on a baseball field again. That'll go a long way for visibility. Making the cleats, making the wristbands, the baseball stuff, the T-shirts for baseball. Get that back in there with the basketball division. You don't have to make signature baseball shoes right away. The signature shoes should be basketball for now to start out. You can worry about signature baseball shoes later. Right now, you're trying to establish your young market, and that's what Reebok can do with the basketball market. Reestablish that with Shaquille O'Neal at the head. And that's how you could do that. I want to see Reebok also retro other models. So stick with the classics. This is what you're going to do. With Reebok, stick with the classics for now. The classics are going to keep you afloat until you can develop more new ideas, especially from the basketball side, with Shaq at the helm, and focus on these retros. So like I said, keep doing the retros, the Club C's, the Reebok classics, the women's shoes with the two straps on the side. I forget the name of them. I had it written down somewhere, but all those things. Do those. Use real hexalite. If you're gonna release basketball sneakers, if you're going to do retros of other basketball shoes in the future, use real hexalite, real leather. You have to use premium materials. You have to, even if in the beginning you're going to take a loss in the beginning, but what you want to do is you want to reestablish quality. That's what you want to do. Adidas failed on that front. Adidas did not live up to their end of the bargain with the quality side. Reestablish quality. That's what you're going to do. So use real hexalite, real leather materials, premium leather materials, premium suede, a real technology, the real pump technology. Invest in these real things, and the customers will notice that. The quality, the details, the real original boxes that they use. Believe it or not, a lot of sneakerheads, they buy the box. They buy sneakers because they like the box. I've seen it. A lot of times I've seen sneakerheads complain because, they bought a pair of sneakers that doesn't have the OG box. Like they have a new box, a different kind of box. People care about this. So use these things. Remember, tell a story. You're trying to tell a story. So use right now, you're going to rely on your classics to get you through. Tell a story. Use good premium materials, premium cotton for the apparel, the jumpsuits, the tracksuits, the T-shirts, the hats. Use premium or really good materials comparable to what Nike and Adidas use for their apparel. You don't want to cheapen the brand. You want the brand to have a certain level of quality to it. Don't cheapen the brand. Don't cut those corners that Adidas was cutting. That's what you need to do. And then, like I was mentioning, retro, use the different shoes. You got ton. Reebok has the beauty of Reebok is, and this is something that not all brands have. There are brands that have a history, that have a heritage. One of the hardest things to do is to start a brand from scratch. Hello. Starting a brand is hard. Start establishing a culture, a heritage when you don't have one is extremely difficult. You are Reebok. You have a history and a heritage and a legacy, a culture. Use it. Use your history and your culture to get you afloat, to keep you afloat until you're able to innovate and create other things. Right now, you're trying to keep yourself afloat and elevate more. So another thing is, listen to what the people want. Do polls. I would poll people all the time if I were them. Poll people. Ask the people, what do you want to see from Reebok? What retro would you like to see released this year or next year? What retro would you like to see released? How about the Nick Van Exels? Nick Van Exel had a shoe. Re-released the Nick Van Exel shoes with real hexalite. How about the 1996-97 Shaq Dunk Mob? I know everybody's going to say, what are you talking about? The Shaq Dunk Mob were the shoes that he wore in LA. Reebok shoes. One of the few Reebok shoes he had with LA. Release those. Go Google those. They're white and purple. Those shoes would sell. You don't have to just make Shaq Attack 1 and Shaq Gnosis. Shaq has more shoes. Release them. Release the other shoes. The Frank Thomases. Release those. The real Hexalite. Real leather materials. The Nick Van Exel shoes. All the Reebok classics. Release them. Bring them out. OG colorways and create new ones too. Go ahead. This is going to help the brand. Use real materials, good materials, real leather, real Hexalite. This is going to bring Reebok back. And of course, communicate with the people, with the people who want your brand, who have interest. Find out from them, what would you like to see released this year? Ask them, what retro have we not released in recent time that you'd like to see come out? There's a ton of basketball ones for sure. You can release tons of them. How about Reebok? Hello, how about the Iversons? You got the answers. You don't have to just release the questions all the time. Like, I understand. I love the questions. I love the Reebok questions. I got a bunch of them. But after a while, it's like, okay, that's enough. We don't need 100,000 colorways in the Reebok questions. Like, people want the OGs. Re-release the OG Iversons, the other ones, the answers. They call them the answers. It's like the answer 3, answer 4. Re-release these and come out with a couple new colorways along the way to kind of sprinkle it in. But use real Hexalite in these. Use real Hexalite and, dare I say, use the original packaging or similar to it to bring back that nostalgia. You tell the story. Tell the story with your history. You have history. Reebok, you have history on your side. Use your history. Use your ingenuity. Use your prowess as a brand. Use your likeness. Use the Vector logo. Do not change that logo. That logo's fine. I love that logo. That logo's great. Leave the Vector logo. That's where you had your most successes, when you use the damn Vector logo. Obviously, on the other shoes from the 80s, you can, you can, when you make those, you see the little British flag or not British flag. Great Britain, United Kingdom flag. Obviously, that's different. You can use that on those. That's fine. But I'm saying that your primary logo should be the Vector. That's your bread and butter. That's what people know you for. That's when you were at your best. And if you do these things, I guarantee you, Reebok, you're going to come back to prominence. I'm not saying you're going to be where you were in the late 90s, but you're going to be in prominence and you're going to be cooking. Now, I'll be remiss if I fail to mention also, I know earlier on the episode on this show, I mentioned the Daddy Yankee and the G Unit and the Jay-Z S. Carter. Funny thing, we live in a society where we clamor over the past, the retros, the rare shoes. Well, guess what, guys? This is the perfect climate to re-release the G Units. The G Units, maybe not so much, because unless 50 co-signs it. But the G Units, the S. Carters, and the Daddy Yankees. This is the time. Everybody is clamoring over shoes that are retro, shoes that you can't find anymore, and the shoes that are going to have that hype. Those 3 shoes may have more hype now. They would develop more hype now than they did back then, just because everybody's a damn hype beast. So release those shoes now. Reebok, if you're listening, I know I said they weren't the most nicest looking models. They weren't my favorite. They weren't the best looking models. But absence makes the heart grow fonder. So it's been years. We've had time to digest. We've had time to miss those shoes. Everybody loves romanticizing over the past. Well, this is the perfect time to bring those back. Bring back the S. Carters, the Daddy Yankees, the people, the Latino population, and the Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico will go nuts over those. Re-release the Daddy Yankees, the G Units, and the S. Carters. Those can all be part of the retros that will be re-released for Reebok. People will go nuts for them, I'm telling you. Especially if you make them a limited release, it will be mayhem. You don't got to release them all at the same time, but boy, I'll tell you, if you have one calendar year where you release them, people will go nuts. I'm telling you. And so those are ways that you're going to bring it back. Stick to the Vector, stick to the classics, and as you find your footing, you'll be able to develop new concepts. You'll be able to develop the youth, which, as I mentioned, you will do with your basketball division with Shaquille O'Neal at the head of that table. leading the charge in the basketball division and looking for new scouting new talent to sign them and create brand new, you got to create innovative designs. You got to get with the times. But to create that new innovative style for the new generation of the Reebok consumer. And that's what you will do. But for now, you will lean on the classics to get you to that point until you can continue to innovate. And that's how you find your niche. And that's how Reebok can find its way again. So, I think, I think I made a good point there. Let me know what you guys think. Definitely, that's all I have for this episode. Make sure you follow me at the Santos Thread Shop. Also, make sure you guys visit us online, man. We're adding new merch. We're adding new stuff for you guys out there. Santos so SANTOS-THREADS.com. So thank you all for listening. That was my little rant. Definitely look forward to catching you guys on the next one. And remember, don't just say what you mean or mean what you say. Say it with your chest. Peace.